Tony Clement. Such a privilege that you are here in these interviews sharing your story. As I told you before, Tony, the idea of this podcast, of these interviews, is to show the story, the life of leaders, and show to the people that not have been exactly the pandemic, but so many tough and hard time in the past of each of you, and the way how you saw the situation, the way how you put a positive energy was the key to transform a problem into an opportunity. So Tony, again, thank you very much. For the people that don't know Tony, I'm not going to talk about Canada, because in Canada everybody knows Tony, and in fact, in the politicals, every single person knows Tony. But I consider a good friend of Tony. We have been working, and I saw very close the hard work and the amazing work that he has been doing in IDU, International Democratic Union. So it's fantastic, all the effort, putting together all the center-right parties in the world. We have been together in South Korea, Sri Lanka, Bosnia, different countries, rich as poor, new as older. So, and getting the best and putting together people. So in some way, what we're doing here is, again, putting together beautiful stories and get people inspired. So thank you again, Tony, and please tell me your story.
Thank you. No, it's a great honor to be on your program and to connect with your listenership. So thanks for the opportunity. I suppose, in answer to your question, when I look back on really 40 years of political activity, starting as a volunteer and then moving up into the party hierarchy of the Progressive Conservative Party in Ontario and the Conservative Party in Canada, getting elected to the Ontario legislature, getting elected to the national parliament. It's a story, I believe, of dealing with adversity. And that's what makes it a timeless story, because there are exceptions. There's maybe 1% of political actors who never have any difficulty or never have any obstacles. It's a straight line from starting out and reaching the apex of power. Maybe there are stories like that, but that isn't my story. And that, I would argue, is not the story of 99.9% of political actors. Everybody has had to deal with adversity, setback, failure, loss. And really, you define yourself on how you deal with those difficult situations much more than how you deal with victory and success and advancement. Anyone can deal with advancement and success. It's a lot more difficult to deal with adversity and failure. So when basically I was never a quitter. I had this trite saying, winners never quit and quitters never win. And when I dealt with adversity, I would just put my head down and try again, learn from the mistakes, obviously, because perfection on earth is not possible, and then move forward to the best of my ability. So I think.
Let me stop you 1 second, Tony, because when you were saying that, it's so true. And if, for example, as an entrepreneur, as a businessman, if you have a mistake or something go wrong in your company, in some way, it's kind of a little bit private. But in a politician like you, when you don't win an election, oh my God, it's your face, it's your effort. So the down. So I totally agree with you that should be a lot worse when you're a politician and have, something wrong than when it's a private company so it's even worse. And I love and in fact, in this podcast, I also take different phrases. Tony, I'm going to steal this phrase that I love it. So please keep going.
And the first election I ran in, which was in 1994, I ran for municipal office in Toronto, and I was a newcomer, and there were 4 main candidates, and 3 of the candidates were conservative, and then 1 candidate was a social democratic candidate. And guess who won? The Social Democratic candidate won with 37% of the vote. But I worked so hard in that election, and was not successful. And I thought, that's it. I had my shot at it, and it didn't work out. I will continue to be a lawyer. I'll work in business for 10 years. Maybe I'll try in 10 years. And that was in the fall of 1994. In the winter of 1995, just 3 or 4 months later, I got approached to run in a constituency for the Ontario legislature, because the election was going to be taking place in June of 1995. And I said to my mentor, that doesn't make, I just lost. How can I now rebound and win? And he said, no, I think you're the right candidate, and you have political experience. You've been active in the party. By that point, I'd been active for 20 years. And so I said, maybe this is my shot. I felt that we had been in opposition for many, many years. The government of the day, which was a social democratic government, was very unpopular. So I thought, this is a chance to take a chance. And really, I didn't feel I had much to lose, because I had already lost a campaign. I knew what that was like, to lose after a campaign. Having another loss didn't seem like such a bad thing, but having a win and being part of a new change-oriented conservative government, that's what I wanted to do. So,
well, one second, Tony. You say two beautiful things. Also, to be very clear,
yes,
you had a mentor. It's so important to have in life mentors in different fields. And in fact, I can tell you that my mentor in politics is also a good friend of you, Eva Gustafsson, because Eva, in some way, I'm like his son. So he really understood the value that I can maybe bring to Paris in communication, but in some way he took me. But all the things that I learned from Eva, all this opportunity, in fact, this call is thanks to Eva, because in some way she's the one introducing me to IDU, to her Hermanson Foundation. So it's fantastic. So to the people that are listening, it's so important to always go close to people that know more than you, are more smart than you, and try to learn from them. Bring value, of course, because you can be a person that is just there because in some way you need to also bring value to the table. But it's so important that, and the second thing that I want to rescue from your words, Tony, is that you just transform a failure in something good. You just said, since I already lost, I'm sad. It's like, so in some way it's something positive, because you know the pain that you can feel, and there's nothing else. So you can go, so I already fell, so we can just win. So I love it. So, and this is the way to see the things.
And I'm glad you said it that way, and I think it's true. Having a mentor makes a huge difference. There's no question about it. Someone you can approach, someone who has experience, who has the depth of knowledge that you don't have as a younger person, perhaps. I think that is very, very important. And the other thing that was important in that successful election, giving away the story, is that I was able to bring together a new team. And that is part of leadership. It's not only being a strong, solid worker yourself, but can you attract people who are going to take the time, take the energy, see the future, believe in you, believe in what you can stand for, and work very hard on your behalf. Because politics is not a solo venture. It really, you are team building. The same in business, by the way. When you've got a business vision, very few can do that completely solo. You've got to build a team around you, and that is the hallmark of success. So that's what you have to do in politics: create a political, especially if in my case, the riding was opposition held. It was held by another party, another political party. The constituency was, and so I had to turn a history of losing into a winning team that was capable of winning. That's what happened when I ran for Parliament again in 2006 in a completely different constituency than the one I had been representing in Ontario politics. There again, they had lost 4 times in a row. to the opposition party, to the contrary party to us, the Liberal Party in that case. So if I had asked the same people to run my campaign in 2006 that had run campaigns there since I think the last successful election was 1988, and it was 2006. So if I asked the same people who had been around from 1988 to 2006 to run my campaign, guess what? I probably wouldn't have won because they're very good at coming in second, not so good at coming in first. And that did all the difference. Having on my team new people with new ideas, a new vision, a new focus. And that election, I won by 0.01%. So it was the closest election. Wow. We have first past the post in Canada. It's not proportional representation. So you have to win each constituency by a plurality of votes. And that was the closest election in that parliament out of the 308 seats. So how did that happen? And by the way, I knocked off the incumbent that I knocked off was the Minister of Agriculture. It wasn't as if it was just some quiet backbencher he was the Minister of Agriculture. And I came in and won the riding, the constituency. So again, team building. And I would say the final piece of the puzzle is have a focused message. When I ran municipally, I ran saying, elect me, I'm going to work hard for you. There was no compelling vision there. But in provincial and federal politics, I was part of a team that had a compelling vision in both cases of change. We were defeating an incumbent government that was a non-conservative government. How did we do that? It was not only that it was time for a change. That's the easy part, to say time for a change. You have to also have a compelling vision of change, a better future for people, something that people can latch onto and say, I'm going to go with I'm not going to go with the devil I know. I'm going to go with change, but it's change that is going to be helpful for me and my family, change that will be helpful for my community, change that I can trust, change that I need not fear. Because in Canada, at least, maybe some other parts of the world, people can be fearful of change. Change is not always a good phrase because it may mean diminution in their ability to survive economically and otherwise. So I think that's the other key critical element for political actors is have that compelling vision that brings people along for the ride, that they realize that they can invest in that.
See, 100%, because in a company, you can offer a salary, you can offer this or that. So the politician have kind of two works. First of all, convince a really good team to work with you and be in the same line, the same ideas, and then together go and convince the voters. So it's very complicated. And again, I've been very close to politicians, and it's so hard because in companies, I'm going to say it's a little bit dictatorship, but in some way the boss make one rule and that's it. But a politician is always need to convince the members. So for me, it's, oh my God, so much work, because it's really never an imposition. Need to be something that you, through your example, through the thing that you are doing, through the clear vision that you are selling, convince them to put all this energy. And also, I like what you said, that you are not the typical leader that have your ideas and they need to follow you. The beauty about that team is that you are open to help and to work together with a lot of people and get the best from all of them. This is another beautiful thing to make successful campaigns. A successful campaign is not just from a big personality. It's more a person that have this ability to show this positive view, help every single member to get the best from them, and together push and feel and make every single person feel that they are part of this movement, part of this change. It's so important to give this a sense of ownership to each member.
Yes, you said it very well. And I would go one step further from what you've just said and say that is not only the requirement in politics nowadays, it's also the requirement in business. I think you were quite right that in generations gone by, business was much more top-down. Business was much more this is the way it's going to be in this company, and you either accept that or leave the company, let's say. What has the research that I have seen in recent years indicates that millennials don't see company culture that way. Millennials want to believe in the company. The company has to have their values. The company has to stand for the things that they believe in, and then they will come along and be a successful partner in that company. If a company ignores that and ignores the values, ignores the social and political trends, then millennials will just shrug and walk away. That seems to be the change in company culture. So leaders, entrepreneurs, company builders have to keep all of that in mind now, whereas before it was, who cares about what I think about a particular political issue? You are my employee and you do what I say. It doesn't work that way anymore.
It's true. Absolutely. Tony, so going back to your life, so you grow up always in Ontario, or where you grow up when I was a kid?
So I was actually born in Manchester, UK, and in the UK, yeah. And my father was from the island of Cyprus, Greek Cypriot, and he emigrated to the UK, where he met my mother in Manchester. And my mother's family was actually from Syria and Egypt and in the Middle East. But they met in Manchester, and I was born. And they wanted, at the time, this is talking in the early '60s in the UK, wasn't a lot of opportunity for entrepreneurs. It was the society was still rebuilding after the Second World War, and it was kind of a miserable place, to be honest. So they left. They emigrated to Canada, and in Ontario, the most populous province in Canada. And they wanted a life where my dad and the family could get ahead. It's the immigrant dream. It's what brings so many people to Canada, and that is still the case. People want a new life and a new start, and they believe they can achieve their dreams in a safe society that Canada generally offers. So we moved to a city called Hamilton, which is a very industrial city. It's about an hour's drive from Toronto. Eventually, my parents split up, and my mother and I moved to Toronto, where my mother worked in the Legislative Assembly for one of the members of the Legislative Assembly. And that was my first taste of politics, was through that, through her workplace. And I was 14 years old, and there was an election called, and I was encouraged to help out, to put leaflets in mailboxes, whatever. And I caught the political bug for sure. And it was a time. People say, well, why conservative? Well, I love freedom. I'm a freedom lover. I love choice in my life, and I love people I love systems that allow people to make choices, both in market economies and in the political marketplace. And at the time, it was the time of the Cold War. It was the time of communism, Soviet communism on the march, and in places like Africa and Asia. The Vietnam War was just concluding, not in a good way for America, let's say, or for people who valued freedom. And so that's what I reacted against. I mean, you can say reactionary, but what is reactionary? Reactionary is reacting against something that you find unpalatable or untrue or hurtful to humanity.
Of course. And
that's what led me to the conservative side. And in Canada, in the mid-1970s, we'd had the same. It was a liberal government, a left of center government from 1963 onwards. So again, time for a change there. Pierre Elliott Trudeau, Justin Trudeau's father, was long ensconced since 1968. He was Prime Minister of Canada. So I was not a fan of Pierre Trudeau, and he was a very statist politician. He liked to hang around with Fidel Castro.
Exactly.
Thought China was a good model, just like his son does.
Wow.
And so I did not take to that. I took to the side that said, no, we want more freedom. We want more market economy. We want more choices to be made by individuals, not by the state. And that's what led me to be a conservative.
But you were 14, helping your mom, and then you was still in the school. Then you decide to study law.
Yes. So I was very active in university campus politics as well, and got elected to leadership positions in student government and in the government of the university, because there were student governors as well as others. And so to me, going to law school at the time was a logical place to pick up a profession. And what I liked about going to law school was I learned how to critically think, because law school teaches you critical legal thinking. And at the end of the day, you're never unemployed. You can always be a lawyer, regardless of whether you have success or failure. What are you doing? Well, you don't have to say you're a consultant. You can say you're a lawyer, and you always have that profession. So to me, it was a good fallback position, which I have used on occasion for sure, as sometimes failure and success compete with one another. So it was a good sort of career move to be a lawyer. And I did practice law for a while, for a few years here and there, although that was not the main focus of my my business career.
Got it. But let me go back a little bit. So you joined the party when you were in the school or in the university or later?
I was in high school. I was in high school.
Okay.
I was in the 10th grade.
Got it. You finished the career and you start working in a private sector.
Yes. So I started as a lawyer. That's right.
Okay. And for how many years until you decide, you know what, I'm going to politics?
Yeah. Well, I guess I got called to the bar to practice law in 1988. And as I say, my first time an election was 1994. So not too much time in between.
Got it. Okay, Tony, I need to jump in some questions. So how old are you right now?
59.
59, super. By the way, all this guitar, do you know how to play Cool Rhythm?
I do. I learned it. I started when I turned 50. Okay. So it's a more recent phenomenon, but I do play guitar, and I do have a rock band that I'm a part of too. So that's
amazing. Love it. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you remember, Tony, when was the first time that you earned some money? So when you were a kid, doing something, or?
Well, my first summer job was working for my dad. My dad had a restaurant. He and my uncle owned a restaurant, and my summer job was to be a busboy in the restaurant, just to, a helper, clear the tables, set up the tables again.
How old you was at the time?
I was 15, and I earned $39 a week, which is not a lot of money. And I worked. My hours were from 10 in the morning till 2 in the morning, because the place became a nightclub at night, and in the back banquet hall became a nightclub. So I worked from 10 in the morning till 2 in the morning.
I saw in all the interviews, Tony, that every single entrepreneur start very early. And in fact, it's funny, the restaurant word that you had, that my kid during, not this summer, last summer, he wanted to join, start working, and we find a place in a restaurant, and he was cleaning the restrooms and everything. And he said, "Oh my God, Dad, I will never throw again a paper in the floor, because now I know how." And it's so important to show people the value of money from the beginning. As soon as you can, send your kids, or if you are listening to this and you're a kid, try to join to work in something to get the real value of work. So it's so important.
Value of work. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I'm a big believer in the value of work. I believe God put us on the earth, and he expects us to work hard, and nothing good happens when you're not working hard. Let's just put it that way. So I think that's how I was raised, how we've raised our children, because we have 3 kids. My wife is a hard worker too. She's a lawyer. And so that's our philosophy as well.
Love it. Tony, what is your biggest success?
Well, I could rhyme off my positions, my ministerial positions: Minister of Industry, Treasury, health minister. But I prefer to look at it as things that I've accomplished rather than positions I've obtained. So, funnily enough, in the age of COVID-19 that we're in right now, I was the health minister back in 2003 when SARS hit Ontario. And that was a major pandemic for Ontario during 2003 when SARS happened. So guiding the province and the country through that as health minister, that was a very challenging time. People were affected. There were deaths. And people got very sick. But I felt like I was put there to be part of the solution. And then I would say next to that, when we had our economic crisis in 2008, the financial crisis,
of course,
I was the industry minister, and I had to do some extraordinary things. We helped rescue with the Obama administration. We rescued the auto sector in North America, and I was because that's located in Ontario, and I was the industry minister. For Canada, we had to do very significant negotiations with the Obama administration. We helped rescue the auto sector.
I don't know if your party loved you so much because you were in the too hard position in the worst time. Yeah. Oh my God!
Well, and then we had. Then I was head of the Treasury when we had to balance the budget after the Great Recession, and. The fact is, I had to make some tough decisions. Had to reduce spending in many areas. I think we reduced spending in 600 different programs, and so that was tough to do. But it got us back to a balanced budget. Now, of course, all the budgets everywhere are, insanely out of balance, and that's going to be a tough road for countries. But at the time, it was a major accomplishment to get a balanced budget in Canada again.
Of course. And people have many or one big. What is your biggest failure in life? If you have some or you have many?
Yeah, I mean, I've had some personal failures where my personal failures have got in the way of my success. So I would put that at the top of the list. But I think through God's grace, because I am a man who has faith in my life, it's made me a better person and has saved me from the impact of my personal failures. And I've had, if you're in politics long enough, I was in politics for 25 years as an elected representative. You're going to have successes and failures. So you've got to learn to deal with both, and both can be corroding to your own soul. Success can corrode your soul, and failure can corrode your soul.
No, so, when you just mentioned,
you've got to overcome both.
Yeah, when you just mentioned is absolutely true. So all this tough situation, all the bad things that happen in our life make us, if we really learn from that, make us a better person. So there is not a better way to learn that from, problem, situation, challenge. So 100% with you. Tony, what is the best advice that someone gave you during your life?
Oh gosh, so many goodies. I got to tell you, this is a bit of a cheat because no one gave me this advice, but I just learned this saying a couple of weeks ago. Maybe you're familiar with it, but it's a saying from Mike Tyson. Okay. And he said, "Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face." And that is so true. We all think we've got the answers, and then life comes along and we get punched in the face. Then what is your plan? Right?
I love it.
And I think that's a great way to look at, again, adversity, right? And so I would, that's the one I've been repeating a lot recently, is the Mike Tyson advice about that.
I love it. Inspiration of legends. Do you have someone that is an inspiration for you, a legend?
Well, I guess in modern times, I'm a great reader of history, so I've read all about the great leaders of the past, Alexander the Great and Julius Caesar and whomever. But of course, for an English speaker, there in more modern times, it would be Winston Churchill. Here is a man who was disregarded by everyone. His warnings were disregarded. And then at the hinge of history, in 5 days, he was able to be plucked from opposition to his own party, basically, was asked to lead and turned around. I mean, most people in Britain, people forget this, most people in Britain at the time, including the leadership, wanted to appease Hitler. They wanted to strike a deal, don't invade Britain and we'll stay out of the war and you can have your way in Europe and wherever you want. That was the establishment. Lord Halifax, who was the other contender to be prime minister when Neville Chamberlain resigned.
I hear that even from the real house was people,
Yeah, the royal family, yeah, absolutely. So he stood up against all of that, and he rallied the British people and he rallied the world. And he said, "We will not surrender to this fascism. We will not surrender to this man. We will fight them on the beaches, house to house. We will never surrender." And the first thing he did before he helped defeat Hitler, with, of course, the help of America and other brave souls in other parts of the world, before all of that, he had to turn around public opinion. And he did it by the power of his voice, the power of his words, the power of his speeches. That's all he had. And it was able to turn around public opinion because people were just so, the morale was so low in Britain at the time. They were ready to strike a deal. And he said, "No, we're going to fight, and we're going to fight them, and it's going to be bloody, and it's going to be nasty, it's going to be horrible, but this is what we have to do." And we've had the controversy about the Churchill statues and all this kind of thing. I'm not saying he's a perfect man. I think we can look back and say, "Gee, I wish he didn't have this or that." But for those who think, well, he had racist attitudes, he probably did, and on some issues. But as my friend Daniel Hannan has said, if you think Churchill has racist attitudes, you should see the guy that he beat. Hitler was the greatest racist of all time.
Absolutely.
So thank God that Churchill was there to help defeat Hitler.
100%. Another thing that I rescue from your words, my friend, is that how educated are you? I think that something that we need to keep pushing is that in the political area, give more best practices, make politicians not jumping from, whatever, and just because they know how to talk. I think it's so important to bring the better education, that people learn about different case of stories. So important education, not just, again, in business, because in some way, I will, since maybe because I'm from business, but I want always to try to get the best from the management tools that we have in business, because in some way you are managing, again, with a country. And in some ways, even with, it's more hard, because in some way, as you just said, church just have the word. So it doesn't have the money, doesn't have the power. It's so hard and if you don't have all the tools of education and learning, so it's even worse. Okay, Tony, one thing, how many days do you make exercise? Tell me the truth.
Well, nowadays it's 7 days a week. It's
amazing.
Yeah, I'm not going to the office, so I get at least a 1 hour walk in a day, amongst other things. When my gym was open, I would go there 2 or 3 days a week, but now it's every day.
Perfect.
And I would encourage people to do that for sure.
Yes, I'm pushing also and showing that successful leaders always take care of their body. It's so important to be a good, really deliver good, work. You need to really be healthy. And do you eat healthy, Tony?
Well, I try. Some days are better than others. I have a weakness for chocolate, I must say.
Me too.
I for lunch today I had a salad with chicken salad. So I feel that was fairly healthy, I must say.
Talking about the chocolate, I have a coffee with Nutella before the meeting.
Okay. Yeah, that'll get you going for sure.
I know. Okay, what time do you get to sleep, Tony?
What time do we go to sleep? Usually around between 11 and 11:30.
Okay, and wake up?
Usually about 6:15.
Perfect. And if you need to recommend a book, just one, what would be your recommendation?
Aside from the Bible, which as a Christ follower, there's lots of wisdom from the Bible. But aside from that, I'm more of a nonfiction reader than a fiction reader. I just finished about last month a Ron Chernow biography. I learned a lot from biographies, and Ron Chernow is the American author who wrote the book on Alexander Hamilton that has become a major Broadway phenomenon with the Broadway musical Hamilton. But it was based on Chernow's book on Hamilton, which I read well before it was thought to have a Broadway play. Then he wrote another book, and these are all large books, 1,000 pages or whatever. And the next one he wrote was on George Washington, which was a great single volume work on Washington. And the latest book he wrote, he was on Ulysses S. Grant, who was the great army leader during the Civil War. He won the battles for the North and forced the surrender of the South, and then became a 2-term president. So, which is, very, very interesting. Yeah, very interesting fellow. So those I've enjoyed reading very much.
You were not an exception. All the leaders, even the most tough CEOs that I've been interviewing, they are all, for me, it's very impressed, all recommend more deep books, spiritual books, instead of business book. And I'm super surprised because for me, kind of the top books that I have in my mind are more about business, but I'm super impressed. I'm learning from this conversation that leaders that I admire, oh my God, the number one book that they have is more about how to be a good person, how more spiritual thing than just business. And the last question, my lovely Tony, an advice in this crazy time, what is the advice to the people that are listening from you?
Well, again, I'll go back to the start of this interview and talk about adversity. We're in adverse times, times where people understandably get anxious. We're in changing times where our institutions are being questioned, sometimes rightly, sometimes not so well by people who want to destroy the institutions, and what would replace them would not be necessarily better. So we are in times of adversity and times of anxiety. So look after your mental health. That's very important. Do not let that slip. Have ways to deal with anxiety, whether it's prayer or meditation, things that keep your body whole and holistic. And also believe that we can get through these adverse times, and that I still believe that better days are ahead. And that's what I would encourage people to believe as well.
I'm 100% with you. Tony, thank you very much for the interview. I send you a big hug and hope to see you soon. I don't know in what part of the world.
Yeah, I would like that as well. Thank you so much.